Hello. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different for me. I have an old EVGA 2080 Super Hydrocopper water-cooled graphics card, and I'm going to convert it to being an air-cooled card because the person I'm planning on giving it to really doesn't want to mess around with changing coolant and the other issues with maintaining a water-cooled system. So we're going to take off the water-cooled cover and apply a air cooler to it, which is basically the same thing you do with a CPU. It's a cooler and fan assembly that fits over top of the GPU. So we're going to start with that, see how it goes, and wish myself the best of luck. Step one, I'm going to take off these 1, 2, 3, 4 small screws. They're silver Phillips heads. One went somewhere, so this should come off now, maybe, although I'll take it back. Looks like it's got at least 1 or 2 other screws holding it on. Okay. Let's remove the back plate. You can see this just is a 2080. They slapped a super sticker on the back of it, so I'm going to assume a 2080 air cooler. This is the other one holding the bracket on. So after this, I should hold this up. After this, I think I can take this bracket off. Yeah. Okay. So it's these 2 screws that are holding these 2 parts of the bracket. Thermal tape. They must have used it to cool the memory on the back side. And there it is. So that's actually quite nice. They actually put some thermal tape on the back of it. I'm going to want to try and keep track of that. If I can reuse this backplate, and there's probably no reason why I can't, I want to make sure that I put that thermal tape back on. That came off really well too. And this is an active backplate because it's like a anodized aluminum or painted aluminum. Okay, at this point, I'm actually going to delete about 20 minutes of footage that I took. That's me disassembling the water block in the front, taking off the acrylic plastic and everything, because it's absolutely not necessary to get the water block off of the PCB. Okay, there are 4 screws that remain around the GPU. They're really small screws, and all they do is hold a contact frame in place. They're not really holding the actual water block on at all. So at this point, all we need to do is gently pry the 2 parts apart, because all it's holding is thermal paste at this point. So there really shouldn't be anything holding these 2 halves together except for the thermal paste and thermal tape that's probably on here. Yep, okay, that's separated pretty well. Ah, I just felt it let go. I think yeah, that's fine. I want to be careful because I don't want to damage anything or pull anything off the motherboard. I'd like to use it again. There we go. Perfect. That looks like actually, yeah. Those 4 screws held that frame in place. This frame. So this is external RGB strips, but these are fan jumpers. This is a lighting jumper, RGB lighting jumper. I don't know if a replacement would have that or not. Don't really care if it has RGB or not. It just needs to power everything. I do need to power the fans. And it looks like it had power for 3 fans, which makes sense because I think it was a 3-fan cooler on the 2080 Super. I'd have to go look up the original one, but I think that's it. So disassembled, needs to be cleaned up, but that's basically everything that I needed. Well, I have the new GPU cooler from AliExpress US, so we'll see how this goes. But it looks correct. It looks like it matches up. I'll know for sure when I get it out of the box. It is supposed to be an EVGA version. It actually has EVGA right on it. One thing it didn't, it came with the thermal interface material on the back, grease there. Unfortunately, they didn't cover it with anything, so it's gotten all messed up. I noticed it does have the 3 connectors for the 3 fans on the front. It has a connector on the back for the light bar up here. The picture did show a mid plate, so a plate that would go between this and essentially what's the front of this card, this actual PCB board down here. Once I take this off, I'm not going to have anything touching the memory. This currently, you can see it has this plate is underneath here, actually covers the RAM and stuff. The back plate is metal and does do some active cooling. What I'm interested in looking at is, do these things line up? Do these holes line up? And they look like they do line up pretty well. I'm going to wish I had that plate though. There's going to be nothing cooling off this memory. It's going to get really hot. Going to have to do a little bit of investigating with the source and find out how do I get that mid plate, I think. Well, that's a bummer. Going to stop right now because I may be done until I investigate this a little bit further. Okay, now it's actually been a couple of weeks since I quit with the last video where I'd taken the card apart, and I discovered I needed the mid frame, or the mid board. This is the mid frame that I was missing, and it's very specific to a card. I think if you have a GTX 2080 Ti, probably doesn't work because I used a bigger die on the 2080 Ti, but 2080 Super, 2070 maybe as well would probably work with this frame. But it turned out the people that sold the cooler part, the actual radiator cooler fan assembly, also sold this part, but they were out of stock at the time I was looking, so it wasn't showing up on the website. When I asked them about it, at least that's what I got, because this is from AliExpress, and so all the communications through translation, so something probably may have gotten lost, but they basically said, yeah, they had it, they just didn't have any in stock. It would take them a few days to get it, which it did. They shipped it to me, and I actually got it only like a week later, but holidays have come up and I haven't had a chance to do it until today, so I'm going to delve in and make sure I have the rest of it. As you can see, it has the cooling pads. The person who sent the cooler portion, well, it's the same place, and I'll make sure to put a link to where I got this from on AliExpress, because again, if you have one of these cards, you have to pretty much get this. I couldn't find another one that I thought was going to be compatible with this Hydrocopper card, because it's a very specific motherboard layout. It's from EVGA, which of course no longer makes graphics cards, so that's going to be hard to find. And I wanted to make sure I got something that would work, that I could actually air cool it with. By the time I paid for this mid card and the actual cooler fan part, radiator fan part, I've got, plus shipping, probably have close to $200 into it now. But this is at least a $200 card. I mean, when I paid for it, it was a $950 card, but it's still worth at least a couple $100 to reclaim it and not throw it in a landfill. And I'm going to use it in another system. But what I needed it to do was find something that matched up, basically with these things, so that it had the same screw locations. As you can see, it matches up pretty well in all the various locations. And it's got thermal tape in all the same places, which is good. They sent me, along with this, set of screws that includes both long screw, I don't know if it can actually be seen here, both long screws and a set of very short screws. I'm not sure which ones I need, but I'm glad they sent them both because I have a feeling I need the short ones even though I only have the long ones available to me. I still have all the screws I took out, but I think I'm going to need the shorter ones. With the original cooler, they sent this set, which had some thermal paste in it. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use some thermal paste I bought that's been recommended for graphics cards, for GPUs, over CPUs. It also had the spring connectors for the mounting. This plate comes off, and then you mount the other cooler and thing over top of it. So hopefully this is the last time we'll be seeing this. One thing I did want to mention, both of these items came from AliExpress and were shipped to me, but the shipping, this particular company and individual was the shipping was excellent. This midboard, I don't know if EVGA shipped it to them that way or where they get it from, but it was cut into a piece of styrofoam, wedged into a bunch of bubble wrap, and it looked like they literally cut the styrofoam out to fit around the edge of this. And it just slipped right in there and fit really snug. And you can see it didn't get messed up at all. Now, most of the pieces don't have the tape on them. This one section has tape on both sides. The rest of it didn't. But it's not messed up and it's not dirty, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Although I did get a speck in it. I think I did that myself, so I can't yell at them. But I think I'm ready to go at this point. I will reuse this back plate. And luckily, all the thermal tape came off of this back plate without any issues whatsoever, so I can reuse it. It's got dents in it, but it's going to be the same dents in it, same indentions that would be in it because of the way this card's built. So I'm not worried about it not making good contact. It should make excellent contact. So I'm going to have to take these pins out. The cooler portion attaches to this part. The back plate, in order to be snug against this, actually fastens through these holes. And then what holds that holds the back plate onto the front, like so. Right. Trying to touch it lightly so I don't mess up any of the thermal tape. But these two parts go on like so. Maybe, I guess I do need the longer screws because that, if you look at with the back plate on it, maybe the screws are better. That's probably it, actually. If you don't have a back plate, especially this back plate's at least 2 millimeters thick. If you don't have a back plate, you would use the shorter screws. If you do have a back plate, you use the longer screws. That is probably the whole mystery to that solved. At least it is in my mind right now until I find out that I'm wrong. Wow. For having just touched the other thing, that's really on there tight. That was impressively tight. Okay, so I need to take off this thermal tape. But while I have that off, I might as well go ahead and take the back plate off because it's easier to do with that not touching, with that mid plate off. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off. You do have to put, this plate has to be in place before you put this part on because otherwise you'll never get it on. So thermal paste it, pull that tape, put the two things together. This isn't particularly, this just kind of doesn't screw on like the Thermal Grizzly. It's just for press fit essentially. So I want to make sure it's on there good and tight. Yeah, it's pretty tight. All right, so let me see. Spread out a little bit, see what it feels like. Yeah, okay. Wow, it looks like Thermal Grizzly, but that's probably not by accident. So I need to take off this tape I'm not exactly sure why that's the only part that has tape on it. This side has tape and so does the other side. The rest of it does not, but yeah. Okay, line those puppies up. Okay, now I just need to look at the holes a little bit. Kind of hard to see from this side, so I'll try not to press down on it. Okay, let's get the holes lined up a little bit. You can slide it just a tiny bit, but not much. Okay, that looks really good. Now I can press it down a little bit. Give some, so I don't want it to move around anymore. I need to touch up where I got my finger in here. I actually could use a little bit of touch up anyway. It's still a little rough in spots. Well, shoot. I have to take that other piece off. So I will get to take those screws back off again because I forgot to take off this other piece of thermal tape. Okay, so the trick is, before I, okay, so these three I can put on now. That's these three. 3 connectors here, 3 fans. I'll make sure I get those in pretty tight. Yeah, they go in tighter than you think. Yeah, there was no way I was going to get those in without taking this apart. Goes the other way. I mean, they are slotted. You can't see it. There is a little slot, so they have to go in the right way. They won't go in wrong. It's interesting, that one that had the tape to go off of it, it actually goes across here. I guess to give it the thermally transferred heat from this metal plate here to the fins. Okay. Push it good and tight. I want to feel them sink in. And they are. Okay, that's those 3. Now for the tricky one, because it's the last one. So I kind of want to hold these 2 a little ways apart. Okay, I see the slots on this one are actually on the side, and it goes, of course, the opposite direction of what I was trying to push it in. Yep, goes right in when you push it in the right way. Okay, so again, now I need to make those things up down there. I really just can't see it as well now. There we go. Okay. We'll see how good that thermal is when I'm done. I think that's probably supposed to fold down in there. Yeah. Okay, so I think this folds down in this way. Well, I don't know if I'd want it up against the heat pipes or not, but you kind of want it out of the road. You want to kind of see it, don't want to see it. All right, so a third time again. I'm going to assume that thermal paste is good and seated by now. So I think it's supposed to have a little tiny bit of flex in it. It's not going to fall off, so that's for sure. I can barely take it off even without the screws in it. Probably that would change, of course, once the thermal paste starts to dry out and all that good stuff. Okay, now all that's left is putting in the back plate and the 48,000 screws. Well, that's not quite that many of the rest of it. But where it really got weird is I need this to work, and I have to remember this bracket has a couple of screws on the front of it that go, okay, it's hard to see from looking at the side. So this little thing here is made to give ground to the bracket. So the bracket actually slides in here It actually attaches into 2 of these with a bolt on the other side. Okay, I was worried there for a second because there's no clearance for this to go under the board, and it didn't go under the board, it went on the outside of the board. I should go look at the original video. It goes on the top. There's a bolt for this one. It's the only bolt on the whole thing. The rest of it's all held in place with screws. With the, good thing I laid that face down. With the back plate in place, it does fit under the back plate, but that's it. Okay. And so now I'm sure I need the long screws to fit through it. So I'm going to test that theory. The one with the, well, I need the one with the bolt anyway. Where is that? Oops. I kept that one, the one with the bolt. Let's see here. The one with the bolt separate because I wasn't sure if it was exactly the same length as the others or not. I think it was. So the plate has to go on. Goes under the back plate, but on top of the CPU, or it's on top of the back of the actual PCB. Drop this through here. Yeah, definitely need the long screws because that barely goes through. Oh, what screws to use? I think I'm going to stick with the screws that came with it because they are working. And they don't look, okay, let me take one of the other ones out and take a look at them side by side. Maybe I'll show you the new ones. They are a fraction of a, maybe a whole millimeter different. Certainly not much. Let me try one of these and see what happens. If it bottoms out before I get it nice and tight, then I'll know to use the old ones. Guess I'll go with the new ones, although it doesn't know. I don't know if they sent, yeah, it looks like they sent plenty of them. Enough to do all of the various things. Okay, before I get too carried away with this, I want to make sure I get the screws on the front of this plate. There are 4 tiny screws. Let me move it back a little bit since I moved it, since it sits so tall. 4 tiny screws that go right here, and I have those 4 tiny screws. All right, so that's those 4. Now just another 20 or so to go. All right, let's see if I've got everything. There we go. Switched it from hydrocopper, air-cooled or water-cooled to air-cooled. I believe it's ready to go. All I need to do now is test it and see how it comes out. Okay, here we have a card in the system. You can see the temperatures here look pretty good. For whatever reason, this power inductor that was here, one of the LR22 power inductors, this one always read high, and I did notice when I disassembled the water cooling jacket that the thermal tape that was on there actually kind of went sideways a little bit and didn't cover that chip completely. So maybe that was it. But that one always ran a little higher than the other ones. But you can see everything here looks fairly good. This software is EVGA's Precision X1 that came out at the same time these cards did. EVGA hasn't made video cards now, like graphics cards, for I'm guessing about 3 years. So this is the last version of it I'm likely to ever see, but it does do a nice job of showing all the temperatures. So what I'm going to do is run a benchmark on it just to warm it up a little bit and see what kind of temperatures we get. Yeah, turn the sound off. I don't want to get some sort of a, well, first of all, I don't want the sound to have anything to do with the benchmark itself, but I also don't want to get a strike on a YouTube video for having somebody else's music, so let's do it this way. statistics on the upper right show that it's getting 97% utilization. The temperature is about 54, 53, which really isn't much worse than what it was on water cooling. I used to see it in the high 40s, maybe the low 50s. I'm not sure about this specific benchmark, but it was somewhere in there. Frame per second, still over 150 frames per second. For this benchmark, this card was no slouch. It actually was a good card. Still is a good card, just it's now an air-cooled card. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Yep, as I noted before, this particular power transformer, or power inducer inductor, is higher than the rest, so that hasn't changed. It's always been a little bit higher. But these temperatures aren't bad. They're in the high 50s. I mean, literally, I think this card was, I believe this card was rated to go up to as high as like 80C or even higher, 90C perhaps, without having any issues. And so if you're keeping it below 60, that's really not bad at all. Let me run a 3D mark. Let's see if it shows up on here. Yeah. Let's run 3D mark and see what we get with that. Okay, let's make this one go away. Okay, now I've loaded up. Let's see if this card cooled down much. It's back down into high 40s for the memory, or for the, this is essentially the power section for the card. It's also a couple power phases for the chip, for the memory, for the chipsets. So they're running a little bit warm. The GPU itself is cool at 37 degrees Celsius. What I'm going to run, let's see, direct time spy, which is DirectX 12 benchmark for gaming PCs. This used to be a gaming PC. It still is to some degree. Oh, something I should have checked and didn't, but I think it is. The power settings on this card were set conservatively, and so this benchmark used to fail because it would actually hit the power limit that was set, but you could up the power limit up to 130% of the, well, I guess the EVGA's recommended power. And I noticed that if I didn't have it set to at least 110%, this particular benchmark would fail occasionally. So again, it's not 110% of the actual power, it's 110% of their target power. The card's capable of running up to 130% of the target power without, damaging the card. I've never seen it go that high, but in this benchmark, and pretty much only in this benchmark, at least while I was watching it, I did see it go up to 107%. I never saw it go maybe 108%, but I didn't see it go to 110. It's certainly not 130. And in actual games, I never saw it really hit over 100 very often. And there's my result. That seems lower than what I remember, but it's good enough. The power target settings I was talking about are these, and I can see here that I've actually turned it off and turned it all the way up to 130% of the target. Right now it's using 7% of the power, but as you can see, it heated up not as much as superposition heated it up, but it got warm enough. What I'll try now is go back to my benchmarks. On the Port Royal benchmark. Do not include the demo, thanks. Guess I haven't run it since I've installed it on this particular machine. And let's go ahead and run it, see what we get. The 20 series was really the first one that had RTX that was really usable. So it does okay on this benchmark. It doesn't do great. The frame rate on this was never wonderful. It's always in the 30s and 40s. Inside of control, I was getting closer to 60 most of the time. It was certainly very playable, and it looked really, really nice. All the reflections off the glass and water in the floor really made it look much more real than without it turned on, so I did leave it on. Okay, so we've got the end of the test. Let's see what our heat looks like. Oh, again, I don't know what it was at the top. It may have been in the low 60s perhaps, but it's obviously staying pretty cool. The GPU's in the 40s. Everything else is below 60. So I would call this pretty much a win. It's actually really not that much more than when it was water cooled. And the water cooling, I would see this maybe get into the mid 40s, low 40s. But now with air cooling, it's kind of running in the high 40s, low 50s. It's not bad for getting rid of the maintenance that is water cooling, which is my main reason for getting rid of water cooling, is just changing the fluid and the schedule you're supposed to do it at, and making sure everything was clean and such was getting to be a hassle. Adds a lot of weight to the system, and I'm fine with it not being there anymore. So I would say this was a pretty good test, and it shows that the air cooling is pretty efficient and it's working like I expected it to. So I'm quite happy with it, and I'm going to say that this thing is ready to go to its new owner.